Coming up, director Randal Kleiser joins Illeana in just a minute.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies.
And now, it's the I Blame Dennis Hopper podcast, starring Illeana Douglas. Eavesdrop with Illeana as she interviews Hollywood's most prominent players about filmmaking, acting, and what really happens on the set of your favorite flicks and TV shows.
Hello, everyone. I'm Illeana Douglas. I'm here with Tamara Berg, my lovely co-host. Welcome to the I Blame Dennis Hopper podcast. Boy, am I excited today to talk to Randal Kleiser.
I know you are. You've so been looking forward to this one.
Well, Grease is the word. Come on. It's summer. We're going to talk about Grease. Just a great movie musical. And you were mentioning to me, we were talking before the show about movies that have been made and things that deserve remakes. I was in a remake.
Yes, you were. One of the, a lot of lists have that in the top 10 best remakes.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
Yeah.
What's the worst remake of all time? I mean, bless his heart, I'm going to say maybe Psycho. Maybe worst remake of all time. The frame by frame. That would have been perfect for an art installation. As an art thing. Or a theatrical presentation, I think. But that's a movie that is, spawned sequels and remakes and a television show. Mm-hmm. So it's really potent to be remade. I guess just because the relationship is evergreen. Crazy.
Yes, it is.
Mother and son.
Weird dysfunctional mother-son relationship. Yeah, there's a lot of...
My favorite remake is probably The Fly with Jeff...
Oh, it is?
Yeah, but I also...
Is it because you're friends with Jeff Goldblum?
No. I mean,
maybe a little
I just
bit.
think it's really... It's really good. I always think of
it is.
Gina Davis's face as he's transferring. It's very troubling. It's David Cronenberg. It's a good one.
Another one that comes up a lot that's in sort of that vein is The Thing.
Oh, The Thing.
Oh my gosh, which I found I watched mostly, like this with my hands in front of my face.
This is the remake now with Kurt Russell.
Correct, yes.
Right. The original, which is black and white,
yeah.
Which Howard Hawks produced. Some people say he may have directed it. But I love that. That one's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that version of The Thing.
I remember them holding the petri dish of blood and touching it with an electrode and it like jumping out. That scared the living daylights out of me.
But they did Grease 2, which was not a sequel.
Right.
Which is
a sequel, not a remake.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's one of the questions I've always been fascinated by, which I guess we'll get to, is that the choreographer directed it, but why didn't Randal obviously direct the film? And Grease 2 is his sort of a cult classic, maybe not in such a good way.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe not for the right reasons.
With Michelle Pfeiffer singing that she wants a guy who's a cool rider. I don't know what that means exactly. She wants a guy who rides a motorbike, and unfortunately the guy's Maxwell Caulfield. There's some complications there. It's just like it's a movie is sort of stands on its own. But Grease, I don't know, it's so good and so of its time. I don't know if you can you can't remake. And they did the live television version.
Right, exactly. I was actually just talking to a couple of people out in the offices before we came up, and I remember seeing Grease. It came out in the summer.
Yeah.
It was like a 105-degree day when I went to see it. Blistering hot. I got finished with it. I went with a couple of my friends, and I was practically crying. I was so happy because I loved it so much.
Yeah.
I was like, why are there not more great movies like that? It's amazing. And then of course went on to memorize every song and half the dialogue. And
it's had a kind of up and down because it was hugely popular, and then, as I was saying, my recollection when I was in school in the 80s, it was like, oh, that's the Grease. Everybody would go to Broadway to revive their career, and
the Broadway
star
show.
and go star, it'd be like Brooke Shields, Rosie O'Donnell,
and was that sort of a bad thing or a maligned thing anyway?
Somewhat. It's sort of, they did the same thing with Chicago now. Like everybody keeps coming in to play. Well, in Grease it was Rizzo.
Sure.
So it would be a big thing, and it always helped the person's career. They'd always have this huge rebound from but I would go every time there was a replacement. So I saw Rosie O'Donnell as Rizzo, who ad-libbed like pretty much the whole show.
Wow.
And
was it fantastic or was it odd?
it was a little odd.
Yeah, because you're so used to seeing
it. It was
right.
like, we're here to see Grease, but it was funny, and I saw Brooke Shields do it, but I saw a ton of different people do it, and it was a wonderful show. And then it's gone into cult status. It's just gone into, like, I've never been to a karaoke party where it doesn't end with people doing the songbook from Grease.
Right.
That's always, I know that's when it's time to go home.
It's not Joe Namath singing "Turn Out the Lights."
Yeah.
It's somebody singing "Summer 11," huh?
And the other thing I was going to mention with Rand, we're going to talk about it too, is when you think of Randal Kleiser, all the amazing television movies that he made. Dawn, Portrait of a Teenage Runaway, which was a major part of my childhood.
Oh my gosh,
that's
yes,
when,
me too.
That's when television movies and Boy in the Bubble, John Travolta. In my growing up, like TV movies were harrowing and scarred you for life. Like Linda Blair would be in prison, or she'd be a teenage alcoholic, or we would just watch all these.
I was waiting to pull out to Portrait of a Teenage Alcoholic.
Yeah, we would watch all these movies as if it was normal, and go to the theater and see Cruising, and everything was horrifying.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting today, like things are, and our parents would take us to see all these movies, and in fact I saw Summer Lovers, which has full frontal nudity. In the film, we thought it was like, again, a nice summer movie, and it's basically depicts a sexy menage a trois happening in Greece. So we're going to have a lot to
the other Greece
talk about.
The
other
nation
Greece, yes.
Just quickly, I want to mention a couple of the movies remakes
Sure.
that we didn't talk about that I love so much. Heaven Can Wait.
Heaven Can Wait, yes, wonderful remake.
Brilliant remake.
Guy named Joe.
What do you think about Birdcage? La Cage aux Folles.
Oh, fantastic. Both versions
I agree.
are amazing.
Completely different and both brilliant.
Perfect screenplay, I believe, by Elaine May, director Mike Nichols, and of course Nathan Lane,
I want to be Elaine May when I grow up. But
Nathan Lane's like one of my top. I've been obsessed with Nathan Lane.
Incredible.
Since I first saw him on Broadway, but he's literally one of my favorite actors.
Father of the Bride.
Father of the Bride, great. Completely different than the original.
Yep.
Steve Martin,
Yep.
Diane Keaton are always
solid. Freaky Friday.
Freaky Friday, right?
Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah, I enjoy it. Not as much as the original.
Yeah,
Not as. What's the original? Is Barbara Harris? Is it? Or am I?
That would be your
Jodie
area of
Foster?
expertise.
I'm taking a wild
Yeah,
guess.
I'm sorry, can't help you with that one.
Okay.
Star is Born. A Star is Born.
A Star is Born. Judy Garland's the best one ever, and they're
Yeah.
remaking it
I know.
with Bradley Cooper.
I know. Hubba Bradley Cooper.
You can't beat James Mason. He's the best.
But
When
Bradley Cooper, come on.
Now, George Cukor's Star is Born with Judy Garland, and that's the crazy year where you just can't. She lost to Grace Kelly, which seems hard to believe.
And then finally, one of my favorite remakes, Secret Life of Walter Mitty.
Secret with Ben
Stiller.
Yes, I recall that one.
I loved that one. I thought it was fantastic. Did he direct that also?
He may have.
I want to say he did. I thought it was absolutely fantastic.
In that one, I'm going to go again for Danny Kaye. I'm going to go for the original.
Oh, but
Sorry.
I love Danny Kaye so very much, and I'm actually on the fence with you. I'm going to put those two in line with
You know
each
what
other.
needs a remake? Is what is the movie with? I think it's playing tonight. We're not live, but it's Ronald Colman and Shelley Winters, and I'm blanking, where he plays the actor, and he's so involved with his acting that he strangles her on stage. He's playing Othello, it's like. I'm thinking of the other. It's not called Random Harvest because it's his other Ronald Colman movie. Oh well, I'll think of it an hour later as I'm driving home.
Maybe we'll put it on the
shooting
Facebook
myself.
page. I think it's time to bring in
Another
Randall.
George Cukor film, by the way.
Okay.
The one that I can't think of.
Okay.
Everyone's out there screaming.
Yeah, they are.
You idiot! It's this. Okay.
Write it on our Facebook page so we'll know. Okay,
Let's
we're bringing in
Randall Kleiser because I'm so excited about this. Randal Kleiser is, of course, an iconic director. He's worked on television shows Starsky and Hutch, Marcus Welby, numerous television movies, of course, Boy in the Plastic Bubble. And then his first, how does it work, your first feature movie? Come up here, is Grease. And then you follow it up with Blue Lagoon, Summer Lovers, worked with my grandfather, of course. Do you approve of the... Did you all wear Grease jackets to the... Oh, my God. Every time I look at Grease is like the happiest movie of all time. All right. Anyway, welcome, Randal Kleiser. I'm thrilled that you're here. And Grease is, of course, the most success... Is it really the most... Is it... When they say it's the most successful musical, do they mean financially or just means
so.
in appeal?
Yeah, it's financial, but I guess if you were to do the whole thing with, what's it called? As time goes by, money gets more...
Amortizing it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yes.
Then probably Sound of Music would be the top one, but just in terms of bucks, I think Grease is still the word.
I think, yes. I think Grease, as I was saying at the top, has had like a rolling... it's been cumulative. Like it was a huge hit, but it never stopped. It just sort of grew and grew and grew.
The most fun part, I think, was the Hollywood Bowl sing-alongs.
Aren't those the best?
Well, I mean, to be on stage with 17,000 fans all dressed in costumes from the movie, I mean, how many directors get to experience that? That was something.
No, they when they showed the movie at Turner Classic Movies, one of the people dress up. Anything where people dress up, I'm into that. Okay, we're gonna get to Grease, but we're gonna go back. You grew up in Pennsylvania, Dutch country.
Yes.
Now,
Well, in a way, yeah.
is this like where the land of antiques and buttermilk
Shaker
and
furniture?
shaker?
Yeah, well, I was born in Lebanon, Pennsylvania, but I grew up outside of Philadelphia at Radnor, the Rosemont area, and went to Radnor High, and so my parents are now living there in Lancaster, in the Pennsylvania Dutch
beautiful.
country. It really is, and there's all these great farms, and it's like the Amish country. It's really nice.
I love, and also later on the land of Summerstock.
Yeah.
You know, I got like little taste of very tail end of doing things like that. And we always start the show, and I think I already know because I did some research on you, but do you remember the first movie? I know the movie that had a lot of influence on you, but the first movie you remember seeing?
Well, probably Wizard of Oz, but the one that made me become a director was the Ten Commandments.
Yes.
Yes, and the opening of the Red Sea was what made me go, wow, I want to be a director. Open seas.
Yes. And did you see it in a movie theater?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I was 10 years old.
So that must have had a...
Oh, yeah. Looking up at a big screen and seeing the opening of the Red Sea. I just went up to Santa Barbara about a month ago. They had a revival showing on a big screen, and I just went right back to being a 10-year-old.
Yeah, well, those kind of memories never...
They trigger you back. Even though you look at it and there's like crazy performances like Ann Baxter.
Ann Baxter.
She's really over the top, but you know, when you're a kid, that looks like regular acting.
Do you know who Ann Baxter's acting teacher was? Maria Ospinskaya.
Oh, wow. Well, that
So
explains a lot.
That could be, right? It could be. Maria Ospinskaya, from what I've been reading more and more, she taught acting sort of on the side in Hollywood and everything. And yeah, her own screen performances are...
But also Nina Foch was in that movie.
Yes, and I was going to say, you also have a special relationship with
yeah.
her.
Yeah, she was my mentor and teacher at USC. She taught there for 40 years, and we did a whole video of her class, and it's out and available now at ninafochproject.com.
And what were some of the elements that she taught?
Well, she studied with Lee Strasberg and Stella Adler, and then she was directed by Otto Preminger and Vincent Minnelli and Robert Wise. So she was very smart. She put all that together into her own type of teachings, and was very, very tough on the students, and scary. It was pretty scary to be in the class, you know. She called you up and she would rip into you, and that's all on the DVD too, and the online course where you see her ripping into the students. It's very, very entertaining, but also educational.
And when you directed, did you ever...
I actually got a chance to direct her a couple times.
Wow.
And that was really fun. I was on a big crane up with like 200 extras, and Nina was at the other end, and she was giving a speech. And I said, "Hey, Nina, did you ever think we'd be here?" And it was kind of this really wonderful, surreal event.
Yeah. God, that's incredible.
Yeah,
Well, I always find that sometimes these things that you dream about end up kind of happening. So now I want to get into USC because this is what long before. Obviously, I was an admirer of your films. What I was most impressed with was you were in the class with Jerry Lewis.
Oh, yeah.
With Jerry Lewis.
He was
And
great.
so I would always see your name. I was like, who? This must have been this incredibly magical class.
Well, we thought that
So say some of the people that were in this class.
Well,
which is,
George Lucas and
Yeah.
Steven Spielberg and I guess Caleb Deschanel. A lot of
Yeah.
people were there. But we all thought that it would be just a comedy class with him being silly and everything. But
Right.
it turned out that he really knows a lot about every aspect of filmmaking, technical and also, of course, staging and comedy. But he could thread a 35 millimeter projector. He could work a Nagra, because when he was an actor, he would go around and talk to each of the crew members and say,
Right.
"How do you do this? How do you do that?" And so that's how he learned everything about directing. And then, of course, he was responsible for the live video feed.
Yeah.
He's the guy who started that.
which is incredible when you see the.
Everybody uses it.
What was
now.
it called? Jerry's Idiot Box? or
Yeah,
something?
right. But now the video assist is something everybody has now. He was the first guy to do that.
To do that, and he did a lot of interesting things with the film Ladies Man and creating
Yes.
that set. He created his own crane, didn't he?
Huge set, yes. I mean, he opened up 2 sound stages and had microphones in every room all over it, so he could walk around and always be covered. So there's no boom man needed.
Do you remember? So and some of the things he was. I'll tell you one thing when I was doing my research that you were talking to him. You said he was the only teacher that wasn't negative in a sense. Like
That's
he
true.
didn't poop. He encouraged you that you were going to get jobs and.
Yeah, because all the other professors were saying, "Hey, if you don't know somebody, if you're not related to somebody, you'll never get in the movie business. You'll have to do educational films or industrial films. So just forget it." And Jerry was the only one who said, "Hey, look, if you think you can do it, you'll probably get there." So he was right.
And did you tail him on one of his
did,
movies?
Yes, it was one called Which Way to the Front, and I went and watched him work. And one of the things I remember is he was working with an actor who's supposed to be really, really nervous, and he was making a peanut butter sandwich, and so Jerry was saying, "Pick up the bread, now put it down." He was talking to him like this, and the guy was trying to follow what he was saying. And then in the movie, that was all gone, and it just looked like he was a crazy person. So that was an interesting technique.
And another thing they said to you, which I think is very smart, is to always think about not only the shot you're planning,
Absolutely.
but to think about
3 shots when you look through the lens. Think about the one before and the one after, and I've always done that. Also, when you shoot a woman, never shoot her from below the chin,
Thank you.
or never shoot her with anything wider than a 35. Is what I sort of remember. Yeah. So I mean, and I followed that too, because I always like my actors to look great.
Well, the reason I'm spending so much time on Jerry Lewis is because when I watch Grease, it kind of feels like if Jerry Lewis were going to direct a musial.
Well, thanks.
This-
That's great. I know that he liked it. I mean, he checked it out and he was happy with it.
It's got, first of all, it's got his color palette.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
got the bright.
His studio.
Yeah, it's Paramount.
Yeah.
Great comedic side players.
Eve Arden and
Oh, my
Sid
God.
Caesar and yeah.
Imogene Coco.
Dodie Goodman.
Dodie Goodman, yeah. And so and then also you were in school with the great John Milius.
Absolutely. John wrote one of my student films, and we both were very, very close with Basil Polidorus, the composer. He ended up doing a lot of our movies, score-wise, and John has been a great friend, and I still see him. He's unfortunately had a stroke, and
Yes.
it's very, very tough for him because he was such a raconteur. He would. I once went to lunch with he and Quentin Tarantino, and Quentin couldn't say anything because John was monopolizing the conversation, which you can't imagine with Quentin.
Yes, and some of his I've read. To read John's words
Oh, yeah.
on some of his scripts.
Mm-hmm. He was a really, really wonderful writer, great guy, and I still love seeing him, and he's still going out and doing things like shooting. And
Yes.
I remember he used to have frozen pigeons in his icebox. I don't know why. I guess he would throw them up in the air and shoot them. I don't know. I'm not a gun person.
And so then, you did your first short film, which I was able to watch some of it, called Peach,
Right.
which was based in part.
Totally on my grandmother, yeah. She was in a nursing home, and we went there on Christmas Day to visit her, and she was non-responsive. And after the family left, I stayed behind and started talking to her and holding her and touching her and trying to have her remember memories. And then I left, and the movie is all about that, but at the very last shot of the movie is her smiling. And so you get the feeling that all that talk got through to her. And
Yes.
that movie was used for training of nurses and things to be more sensitive to people in that situation.
Well, that's what I was going to ask, because it seems very ahead of its time, and was it just a natural?
It happened to me. So I was told by my friend Curtis Harrington, the director. I had started a master's thesis that was horrible, and I couldn't finish it, and he said, "Why don't you do something personal?" And then that's when I had that event, and I wrote about it, and that got my career going. Was that idea of doing a personal movie instead of something that was like just nothing.
That must be such a learning lesson to remember that.
I always talk to students about that. Make something personal,
Yeah.
something that's hard to talk about. That when you write the script, you're afraid to show it to people. That's what's going to be good.
Oh, that's a good. And the and also this was a film that's been preserved too. So that's
Yes, it was one of the 25 movies that they select every year for the National
amazing.
Archives.
Yes.
Along with Back to the Future and All About Eve. I mean, they picked a student film, my student film.
That's fantastic.
Incredible. Yeah.
And I want to mention, of course, that you did. What year did you do Portrait of Grandpa Doc?
Oh, yeah, that was
With my
about
grandfather.
73 or 74, somewhere around there. Yeah, that was wonderful because, after I did Peach about my grandmother, some people wanted, the distributor it was doing so well, the movie was doing so well, he said, "What, can you do another one?" And I thought, well, who could I write this one about? And I thought about my grandfather. And Diane Baker, I had directed in a Marcus Welby episode, and she had seen Peach and thought, well, let's do something together. And I told her about my project, and she told me that she knew your grandfather,
Yes.
Melvin. And I said, "You think he would do it?" And she said, "Let me talk to him." And so we got him to go back to my grandfather's family home on the beach in Seaside Park, New Jersey, and I restaged all of my memories about my grandfather with your grandfather.
Wow, that's a guy just got chills.
It was amazing because it looked sort of like my grandfather. And we went out onto the boat and did crabbing together, and then he's in the bar. He was telling me, "I'm going to send you to art school because I see in you something that I think will go somewhere." And all those memories I put together with him playing the part, and it was magical. That was amazing to do that. It was like, I guess in a way, of creating a dream, memories in a dream.
Do you feel like actors at that time were more accessible to open artistically than they are today? I feel like so many times now. I mean, Bruce Davison is in Peach, and he says, "Well, he'd been in big movies, but he did your movie because he liked the subject matter." And when you're talking about my grandfather, it sounds like he was serious about it. If this has something important to say.
It's a good point. Today I have a project I'm trying to get that has a young leading man in, and I've sent the script to lots of young actors, and I don't even think it gets to them. I think the agents stop it because it's not a lot of money. They wanted them to do Spider-Man 12 for $10 million. So I don't know if these actors even see the scripts that could get to them.
Right, that they have that social, my grandfather, which affected me a lot, came out of an era where social things
Oh
meant
yeah, he was big.
a lot.
Yes.
You know, in the Blacklist and things like that.
And your grandmother too.
Yeah, Helen Hagen Douglas. So that if it was a subject matter, and he also worked with Dory Sherry at RKO, and he really did sort of message films, and so that was always, I think, part of his consideration for, for doing a film.
Yeah, I think, like I say, it was really great. And also, he was fairly old at the time, and so he couldn't. We did scenes on the beach where he was supposed to be walking. We had to have a stunt double for the walking from behind, but he was great in the close-ups.
Yes. Well, I saw him on the boat. That was, because I don't think, I don't remember him too. They had a lake house up in Vermont.
Oh yeah.
And so that's where my whole childhood was part of seeing Diane Baker. She was around. Kind of all the time. So it's been really nice to stay in touch with her and tell stories. So then after, and you said something also interesting that around a little bit before this, that the movie Easy Rider really then breaks open films in a completely different way.
That was the turning point, I think. It was like, up until then, studios have been making movies for wide audiences and families and stuff, Doris Day and Rock Hudson movies, and there was no movies really aimed at young people, and our generation suddenly came up, and we were going to the movies, and Easy Rider came out, and we all went to it, and that sort of changed shifted everything, and then the independent world started to take off with films for young people.
The movies that you were doing, the television movies, like, Dawn, Portrait of a Teenager. I know. There's so much part of my childhood.
You know what, though? I mean, I once looked at that movie trying to find a clip to show, and I couldn't find one. It was so bad. It's the only one of my films I can't find a clip to show because it's like...
But, it's funny, Randall, because when I was growing up, we took... I mean, maybe, again, because we had limited access to films. It wasn't like, you could see everything.
Right, like
so,
today, yeah.
So, when you got home from school and you watched an after-school movie, you really learned something. You really learned, don't run
how
away.
to be a hooker, right?
We learned
How to run away and be a hooker, right?
We learned that's what happens if you don't get along with your mother.
Yeah.
You bet, So they were cautionary.
Yeah, cautionary tales.
They were cautionary tales, as was. But the again, cult status. The boy in the bubble has and that's again based on a real life incident.
Yeah, a boy who had no immune system, and when AIDS came out, I always thought, why don't they try that with people who had AIDS at the early part when there were no ways to combat it? Just put them in these bubbles. But I never heard of anyone doing that.
Yeah, and so that leads again. This just seems an incredible leap of faith of working with John Travolta. He says, "Look. Bring on my friend Rand." I mean, what did he see in you that you were able to stage then this?
Well, first I was originally flown to New York the week that Tribal Rights of the Saturday Night came out in the New York Magazine to meet Robert Stigwood about directing Saturday Night Fever. That was the first one. Because I think John had said he wanted to work with me, so that was the first thing I met on, and then suddenly I was on Grease. So I think Alan Carr probably had something to do with that.
And your impressions, it's interesting to go back because I was looking at interviews of John Travolta early on, and I was thinking, what's interesting about him is that component that he comes from Broadway. That is what kind of really made it. He's on, even though he's on Welcome Back, Kotter, he had that confidence of somebody that was on stage.
Yeah, he played Duty in the Broadway show of Grease. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, he was. The first lead he did was Boy in the Plastic Bubble, and everybody in America knew him from Welcome Back, Kotter,
right?
And he was excited about having his first lead. And then, of course, I cast Diana Hyland to play his mother, and they ended up dating.
Yeah.
Afterwards. And then she died, and he accepted the Emmy for her after she died.
God.
Very wild ride there.
And then the next thing you're doing, Grease. So when you're first hearing, do you have the script and then the songs, or do you have the song and then the script?
We went to see the show.
The show.
It was in Chicago. We flew to Chicago. Alan and I went to Chicago and saw the show, and then we're trying to figure out which songs worked and which songs maybe needed an upgrade. And Summer Nights definitely worked on the stage.
Yeah.
And We Go Together. Those two were like, wow. And
Yeah.
Grease Lightning.
Grease Lightning is great.
But some of the other ones we thought could be better, and we got John Ferrara to write You're the One That I Want, and Hopelessly Devoted to You, and we had, and Frankie Valli wrote, Barry Gibb wrote Grease song for Frankie Valli, so
Yeah.
it was really fun that summer because driving along in my car, I had a convertible, I turned on the radio and go from station to station to station, and they're all playing all summer on every
It's my
station.
childhood.
I thought, is this how all movies work?
I know you've told this before, but it is interesting. Olivia Newton-John didn't want to be in the. I've never heard of this where she requests
The screen test.
a screen
yeah.
test.
Yeah, she wasn't sure it would work because she had done a sci-fi movie in England that didn't work, and she didn't like it, and she didn't like how she looked, and then she was concerned a little bit, I think, about playing opposite John because John was much younger than her at the time, and even now. But so she wanted to see how she looked and how she felt about me, and so John and I got together and worked with her, and we did the drive-in scene as a test, and she felt very comfortable, and we did it.
Oh, they worked out, and she also came up with her look at the end. She comes out of the trailer with a.
That's right. That was when we were shooting the drive-in scene. That's when they put that look together, and it was at nighttime at the drive-in in the valley. It's not there anymore. I forget the name of that. Anyhow, she came out of the trailer and she was walking towards me. I was by the cameras at the drive-in, and this blonde girl's coming and looking in this wild outfit. And I said, "Who the hell is that?" And the whole crew is going, "Wow!" And they didn't know who she was because it was dark and she looked so different. And it was a big night.
Well, and a look which is again crazy. This would never happen again. Which she replicates at the premiere. She goes to the premiere as nice Sandy and goes to the after party. It's just crazy.
That was Alan, I'm sure. Alan Carr. He was like such a showman.
There's such a
Yeah.
So you're shooting in Paramount.
Yeah.
And how long did some of the dance sequence? I know that once the scene in the dance contest took about a week to shoot.
Yeah. We shot that at a high school out in the eastern LA, but we shot at 3 high schools and at the lot, and we rehearsed for 5 weeks at a soundstage ahead of time, and I would rehearse the scenes, and then Pat Birch would rehearse all the dancing scenes for those 5 weeks. And during lunch, we'd work on the transitions from dialogue to dance.
Had you been a fan of? Because again, one of the things about the movie that to me just holds up so well is that the dance sequences are just so well
Pat's
shot.
Wonderful, and I had Bill Butler, who shot Jaws. He was the cameraman, and so the two of them, Pat had done the Broadway stage version, so that was like easy for her to adapt that, and Bill had shot in Panavision quite a bit.
So it's widescreen.
Yeah. So, and I had never done that, so it was great to have them, and then. Alan surrounded me with really great people, and of course the costumes by Albert Walsky were fantastic. If you look at those costumes, they're flawless. And
his it's got touches of every great. It's got a little bit of Elvis. It's got every little great.
We had the windbreaker from Rebel Without a Cause in the beginning, although it was blue. In the movie, it was red. But yeah, Albert did a great job.
Yeah. And do you remember having a favorite day? I know you had a lot of people.
I think
that
the drive-in
visited.
was my
your
favorite day because I got to do something that no director would ever do again, which is to pick out the cartoon that was going to be behind John that night. I sent away for 12 popcorn trailers. And normally you would animate that yourself, and you'd have it planned out and storyboarded and ready to go, and think it out. But in this case, I just stopped production and I said, let's all look at these trailers. And we just started looking at 12 trailers, and I said, oh, well, I like that one. Oh, wow. Can you back that one up so that the hot dog jumps in the bun at the end of the playback? And they said, well, let's see if we can figure that out. And so we did it that night. But it looks like it was all planned.
Oh my God! No, it looks amazing. You had, you had people like Rudolf Nureyev visiting.
Yep. And the guy who bends spoons, Uri Geller, came to the set. And I think Jack Nicholson came by, and I remember Warren Beatty was on the lot at that time. So it was really well.
Because nobody was doing a music. I mean, was anyone even doing musicals?
Well, yes, actually, there was another musical being shot right at the same time, which was Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
Okay, see, no, I don't remember. We don't remember that one.
That was also Robert Stigwood, and that was the movie they thought was going to be the big hit.
Oh, that's
so
funny.
Their cast and crew party had mounds of shrimp and caviar, and we had hot dogs and hamburgers, and they left us alone on Grease because they thought it was just going to be a little teen musical that would come and go.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Boy, were they wrong.
Well, it was good because they weren't breathing all down our necks.
Did I have to ask about Eve Arden just because I'm obsessed with her?
She was amazing. I'd known her ahead of time. I don't know how, through her manager Glenn's.
Yeah.
But she's exactly the way she appears on screen, and so is Olivia. Those two actresses.
Yeah.
You know, when you met them, they were just like their on-screen personality.
It's just incredible.
Very fun lady.
Stockard Channing said that it was a fantasy, that she thinks the reason it's lasted, it's everyone's fantasy of how they wanted high school to be.
Maybe so.
For them.
Well, there's archetypes at every high school like those people.
Yeah.
You know, you always find the people like that. And Warren, the guys who wrote the script, the play, capture that. But Alan and I kind of, we made it a little more pop, I think.
Yeah.
Than it was. It was a little more gritty in the play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's got that's why I said it's got the best of Jerry Lewis in terms of the color. Mm-hmm. Another thing I wanted to ask you about is just because you love production design and again, Grease seems to really have that attention to detail, which then goes out the window in Grease 2 a little bit. It tries to be a little bit more realistic. And what were the reasons that you didn't do Grease 2?
Well, at the time, I was doing Blue Lagoon, which
I
was
see.
something I was trying to get off the ground even before Grease, because I absolutely loved the book, and I thought it would be fun to do a movie that was closer to the novel, because the movie that was made in the 40s with Gene Simmons didn't follow the story, you know, because they couldn't. They couldn't get into the sexuality of children growing up without any instructions, and so they had subplots about pirates coming and making them dive for oysters and things like that. So it was fun to be able to go back and do the real book.
And where did you shoot Blue Lagoon?
That was shot on a little island called Nanuya Levu in Fiji, and it was where the first movie was shot. You know, I thought it would be fun to, and I was trying to find it. I saw the movie, and I got a seaplane that was flying all over the Fijian Islands looking for this cove with a little island off to the side, and finally found it and landed, and the island was owned by this man named Richard Evanson, who comes from America, and he was living there and let us shoot there.
The DP of Blue Lagoon was Nestor Alejandros,
Yes.
who the first movie I ever worked on was Nestor Alejandros, New York Stories.
Oh, cool.
It was just a little small thing, but my God, Nestor Alejandros.
Yeah.
But just tell me anything about him.
He was fantastic. You know, I was about to give up on Blue Lagoon because no one would let me do it. And then I saw a 70mm print of Days of Heaven at MGM Studios, and I just said, wow, this is the look I want for Blue Lagoon. And I said, who's this young guy who shot this? And it turned out it wasn't a young guy. It was a middle-aged guy who had done a lot of Truffaut's films. So I tracked him down, went to New York, met him, and he inspired me to not give up and to make it happen. Wow. And he was a wonderful guy, the best artist I've ever worked with in any way, because he was like, every movie he would do, he would base on a painter of some kind. And he has a book called A Man and a Camera. He's gone now, but A Man and a Camera, and every chapter is about which painting he used as inspiration for the movie he did.
Well, you can learn a lot from looking at, I mean, people always forget. It's like to go back and look at paintings. You can actually learn a lot about light. And
We used Paul Gauguin's
the best.
images for Blue Lagoon, but he every movie he would pick one.
Were there any technical difficulties because of the bright sunlight or the water? Or how does one compensate?
Yeah. Well, what we did was, like in Days of Heaven, we did a lot of magic hour photography.
Oh, I see.
Where you rehearse the show, you rehearse the day's work all day long,
Yeah.
and then right at magic hour you shoot their day's work with several cameras, and you get this amazing look, which is very dangerous because if you miss it, you've missed a whole day or behind a day, and you can see this in La La Land. That wonderful dance scene at dusk.
Yes.
When I saw that, I thought that's got to be special effects. But I talked to the director, and he said no, that they did the same thing. They rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed, and then shot right at magic hour.
Yeah, but that must give it a certain excitement, though.
Oh
too.
yeah. It's almost like going on stage in a way, like a Broadway show.
And so the movie comes out, and then so some people didn't like the movie. It gets sort of a bad.
Kitty porn, they called it.
It's such a shame.
Well, it didn't hurt the box office.
Oh, it didn't. It still did well.
Yeah. And Columbia took out a full-page ad talking about how it was natural, everything was natural that was in the movie. And, it never even occurred to me that there was anything salient about it because I shot it in a way that, it's just beautiful and, it's sensual, yes, but there's no real erotic stuff in it.
Mm-hmm.
Although when the scene where Chris Atkins is masturbating on the rock with his back to us, after we shot that, Brooke came up and said, "What was he doing on that rock?" And I said, "Ask your mother."
Excellent.
That's how you learn about life.
Yes.
Doing movies. Have you kept in touch with either of them?
Well, yeah, actually, we were all invited back to the island. And Brooke couldn't make it, but Chris and I went back for 30 years later, and they run the movie every week there. It's become a resort where there's, it's like $1,500 a day, and it's become this wonderful resort with solar energy, and they have 90 staff members for 14 guests, and and they put on shows. It's become like this wild place. I mean, people like Al Gore and celebrity Britney Spears. And it's a great place for honeymoons and stuff like that.
Oh, to recapture. They didn't do a sequel to Blue Lagoon, or did they?
Yes,
they
Return to the Blue Lagoon, and it really. I wanted really hard to do it as the second book that the author wrote, but the studio wanted to just rehash the first movie, so I wasn't that involved in it. It's too bad because the second book would have been nice, but and Mila Jovovich played the character, she was wonderful, and but it wasn't like inspirational because it wasn't based on the material.
Right. And then is the next movie called Summer Lovers?
Summer Lovers, yes.
Which I guess is a major part of my childhood. I said when I was growing up, your parents, we just went to the movies and you saw whatever.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, it seemed so, it didn't affect us, but badly. It seemed like that's what happens when you grow up. You go to Greece and
you have a three-way.
You have a menage a trois. And I got to know, one of the first people my first job ever when I moved to New York is I worked for a film publicist named Peggy Siegel. And I remember seeing Peter Gallagher walk. I was like, I've seen him. Idol maker. But that's how you had originally, you had another actor and he had to drop out. So tell that story.
Dennis Quaid and the girl was Dennis Quaid and I'm getting old. I'll think of it in a second. Anyhow, I had these two actors who were going to play the role, and they both called on a Friday and said that they didn't want to do the nudity, and they were backing out. So I had a crew waiting in Fiji, and I had a recast over the weekend, and so I immediately hired. I had Willie Ames and Diane Lane. That's who it was.
Oh, I see.
Oh wait, no, we're talking about this is Summer Lovers, right?
Summer Lovers,
Oh, yeah.
yes.
Because I had that problem happen on Blue Lagoon too.
You're kidding.
Yeah.
So that could have been Diane Lane.
Yeah, Diane Lane and Willie Ames were the original people.
that
They
idea.
backed out, and then on on Summer Loves, it was Dennis Quaid and someone else that backed out too, and so I had to recast over the weekend, and that's how I saw the Idolmaker that Saturday night on that week, and then cast him on Sunday, and we went to so. It happened twice.
Well, there's another great story with, it's kind of like Lana Turner, the way you got Daryl Hannah in the movie. This is crazy.
That's right. I was having lunch at the Warner Brothers commissary, and she was shooting Blade Runner, and I just saw her across the room, and I saw her face, and I saw her look, her body, and everything. I thought, wow, she'd be great in Summer Lovers. And so I wrote this note to her. I wrote this note. I said, "To the girl in the pink dress, if you are an actress, call this number for a screen test. This is not a joke." And I gave it to the waitress, and then I left. I didn't want to go over and because then she'd think I was trying to pick her up or something.
Yeah.
So then she called and she got the part. So.
Oh my God. I'd pay anything to see that note.
I think she still has it.
It
Yeah,
would be
yeah.
incredible. Like that's everyone's fantasy. So you go, and now where did you shoot that? What island?
That was in Santorini in the Greek islands. I had heard about it when I was promoting Blue Lagoon. One of the journalists said, "Hey, I just went to Santorini." I said, "What's that?" And he told me about how everybody from around the world, all these European kids would go there, and there was nude beaches, and they would have all these affairs. And so I went to check it out and wrote the story when I was there.
Was it based on any autobiographical?
Well, I'll never tell.
Could be. It's a great movie to watch in the summer, though.
Oh yeah, and the music is good too.
Oh, the music is the music is beautiful.
We went around. I got the top 10 songs from every country that in Europe, and I listened to them all, and then we sprinkle those throughout, like the source music, which is what was happening there. You know, we were hearing songs from all around the world because kids from all over Europe would go there. So
The first time I was ever in Europe, I think it was 84. No, wait, even before, maybe 83. But even in those days, they had radio. I remember being in Vienna and they still had Radio Free Europe. And so you could be there and listen to the Beatles. And I felt like I was in the 1950s. It really was. So to hear an American song, you know.
Yeah. Well, but also the local songs were very cool. They're very different from what we normally hear. So in Summer Lovers, you hear American stuff and then all this kind of weird
that nice
pop stuff from different countries.
Did you ever go back to the? I'm sure they have. Now, do they have watched the movie every year also?
I don't know because I went back there under very unusual circumstances. It was to scatter the ashes of a friend, and so it was not like a celebration. Well, in a way, it was a celebration, but that's when I went back.
Were there any, when you were doing the film, was there any inspiration of some of these French films like Jules and Jim?
Sure.
All those kind of triangle?
Sure, all the French movies. That's where I got the idea of doing an American version of a French Ménage à Trois movie. That was what was the inspiration for that. And then, you know, when I was in college, I saw all these English films called like Morgan, Alfie, Darling, and Knack, and I got to do a movie like that too called Getting It Right. I found a novel, a comedy novel about a hairdresser, a straight hairdresser who is a virgin, and how he falls in love. And I got to work with Lynn Redgrave and Helena Bonham Carter and Sir John Gielgud. That was another wonderful project that most people don't know about.
No, and did you shoot it in London?
Yeah.
And now how do I get to see this? Because I haven't seen this one.
I mean, I'd love to figure out how to get that on Netflix or something. 'Cause it's really fun. You know, I don't know how you'd go about that. The company was a small little company, but it's a fun movie. Getting It Right.
So that type of movies that involve like quick cutting, a quick script. What is the farce? Because when you say the Knack, I'm thinking
the Knack was fast paced. This is more like Georgie Girl. You know, just a real. All those movies that I mentioned were all about sort of like quirky people in London who were, trying to find their way and fall in love, and that's what this novel was like. So I tried to shoot it in the style of those movies, and cast a lot of the people who were in those films. So it was like taking my college memories and trying to recreate them.
You must have. I mean, to get to work with John Gielgud. That must have
Wow,
been.
that was fantastic. I mean, he was playing a lord who had bought the title, you know, and so he came up with an accent that was kind of like trying to be posh, but not really, you know, and so every once in a while he would say a word that was like off, and he did that all on his own, you know. I all I did was aim the camera at him. I didn't really direct him. But he was funny.
I always heard stories just from things I've read, and his whole gang, because he had his gang of like Ralph Richardson and he, and then he was very like, he was very kind of bawdy and,
Oh, yeah.
you know, not much like we see him in the movies.
Sure,
But he was
yeah.
he'd be really outrageous and say crazy things. Did you ever?
No, when I worked with him, it was just one day, and I was in awe of him, so we weren't hanging out. We just had like a few hours to work together.
Yeah.
And he was trying to remember his lines and stuff, but it was really a magical time to be there working with him.
And what year again is that? Is that
I think
one?
it was around 89, maybe.
So relatively.
Yeah.
Was there something wrong with the distribution or what?
It was this company called MCEG that went bankrupt. It was Jonathan Crane, who was a wonderful producer and the husband of Sally Kellerman. And he took us to Cannes and had wonderful parties and stuff. But, you know, when you're trying to do a small company, and you're up against the biggies, it's just hardly ever works.
Well, this is like a whole time. So after doing all these studio movies, you start doing more. Is this more in the independent vein?
Yeah, I kind of like the idea of doing things where there's not a lot of people telling you how to cast or how to cut it or what should be taken out, what should be kept in. You know, it's more fun to do independent movies.
But had you had that experience? Because it seems. I mean, when I think of your early movies, it just seems like you're gliding along.
Well, Summer Lovers was kind of an independent movie. I mean, I wrote that one, and I didn't have a lot of people pushing me around on that. But when you work for the big studios, that's when there's a committee that helps you decide everything.
which is not as fun.
Yes, right.
And how do you get involved with doing the Pee-wee movie?
Oh well, Paul Rubens was the voice on Flight of the Navigator. I did that movie for Disney, which was a kid in a spaceship movie, and we were looking for a voice, and I'd seen Pee Wee Herman, and I thought he'd be a great voice, and he said yeah, and so we worked on that, and then when he wrote and produced Big Top Pee Wee, and so he asked me to direct that.
Did you enjoy?
Oh yeah,
working with him.
It was fantastic. We were out in the Disney Ranch, and we had an actual whole circus that we brought in, and hippopotamuses and elephants and giraffes. We had Michael Jackson's giraffe we used, and it got loose when we were shooting and started running toward the freeway, and all the guys there jumped on horses with lariats and went galloping after and roped the giraffe before it got to the freeway. It was like, whew.
That's what you need on the on the DVD extras.
Yeah.
Okay, so then now I want to spend time talking about you're involved in the whole digital revolution, and how does this even come about? Because you were one of the sort of the first people to kind of jump on the bandwagon, virtual reality. And
George Lucas was my roommate in college, and so I followed him all the time, what he was doing. And when
was he a slob, or was he neat?
No, he was kind of like he was very withdrawn, and he did a lot of drawing and stuff. And
someday I'll.
He was he's focused on his little movies, and I was an actor in his first wind-up Bolex film called Freiheit, which is online now.
Cool.
But
so he's talking about virtual reality.
He was talking about the digital sets. Working with digital sets when he was doing the first Star Wars.
Wow.
The prequel Star Wars. And so I went to visit him when he was editing them, and I saw how he was shooting, which was shooting on green screen or blue screen and building the sets in the computer. And it occurred to me that what he was doing was not expensive, you know. So I tried it myself with this small little movie called Red Riding Hood, where I was trying to figure out how that worked, and got to do moving cameras with digital sets and connect them so that everything worked together. And that was fascinating, and it's the way most movies are made now, especially the big ones, you know. It's definitely all the comic book movies are done that way. So that was the beginning of that. But that led to me wanting to do more interactive stuff, and I did the Honey, I Shrunk the Audience for Disneyland,
Right.
which was a lot of fun. And that led to working for the U.S. government, doing a Humvee with movie screens around it for soldiers to learn about IED explosions. And so it was like a Disneyland ride, and the Humvee was a full-scale Humvee that would go along like that, and we filmed. In 360, we filmed what they would see out the windows, and so when you're in it, it felt like you were really driving through the desert, and then looking for bombs in the road ahead. And then when you hit one, they had all these special effects worked out so that it would jerk the Humvee, and smoke would come in, a big explosion sound, and the sound of ringing in the ears, and this really has helped a lot of soldiers who have gone through that. If they go through an actual explosion, they are not freaked out as much,
Right.
and they don't stagger out and get picked up by snipers, or if their buddy's leg is blown off, they can help him. You know, they're not just like freaked
Right.
out.
And is this the thing about you also invented a digital sort of co-invented a
Well, yes, Paul Debevig is a brilliant guy at the USC's Institute for Creative Technologies, and together we were fooling around with this project that was sort of like a digital version of Cinerama, and had 3 projectors, just like the old Cinerama. And
Right.
it was an experiment, and it looked great. It looked just like Cinerama, but you know, I think things have moved on to IMAX and stuff like that. But
they have.
for a little while, it was very cool.
Yeah, well, I was looking at things of you on the internet with this. I mean, it's fat. Did you ever think you could be an inventor and go in this technical route?
Well, I love from the Ten Commandments on. I mean, I
Yeah.
love special effects and tricking the audience and trying new things. And the exciting thing about what I'm doing now, which is virtual reality, I have a series called Defrost that's going to be coming out soon. And it's a 12-part series of 5-minute episodes. And you become a character, and you're a woman who is woken up after being frozen for 30 years. And you look down, you see your body in a wheelchair, and the family comes around and starts talking to you. And the thing about virtual reality is that when an actor looks in the lens, a movie lens, it looks like they're looking at the camera, but in virtual reality, it looks like they're looking at you. It really feels like these are real people who are really in the room talking to you, and it can be very emotional, because a lot of people who have seen our show, there's a moment when one of the actors, Tana Frederick, says, "I love you, Mommy," to the camera, and people come out with tears in their eyes. So it's been really amazing.
Is there anything different the way you direct them to act? Is it any?
It's more like
subtle?
a play. It's more like
Okay.
a play, because we shot with no cuts. Every episode is 5 minutes with no cuts, and I try to have the wheelchair that the viewer is in move in some way, so it's not static.
Right.
And it's like theater in the round in reverse, because instead of the actors around, the actors in the middle, you're in the middle, and the audience is in the middle, the actors are around you. So it's kind of cool.
Oh, that sounds amazing. I love that.
You have to try it.
Oh, well, I know. I'm afraid. I told you before. I'm a little afraid.
Oh,
I'm afraid I'd get lost. Be
well-
like Go in a Wrinkle in Time or something.
Well,
Wouldn't be able to
there's
get
so
back.
many different ways that it can be used. As we were talking about earlier,
Yes.
it can be used for training people to get over phobias. I saw one where for people who hate spiders, you have a spider coming across this table, and then you have a thing you can push more spiders, less spiders. Then as you get trained, you can have more and more spiders and not be crazy.
I know. See, I don't know if I could do it, but like you said, to be on an
not real.
airplane or
Yeah.
I know, but it would feel like my thing would be rats. I
well,
just couldn't.
This might train you.
I know.
Just what you need, right? To not be afraid of rats. I think that's an okay phobia to have. You don't have to worry about that.
But the airplane thing, but when you said about the Humvee, I started because I am also a
yeah.
little afraid to fly, and I was thinking,
Flying, it's wonderful, because when you put it on, I've done this in an
Yeah.
airplane, put it on, and it feels like you're somewhere else completely. You're not
Yeah.
aware that you're flying at all.
That's amazing. And the person next to you finally won't talk to you.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Randall, you talked about when we were out there. You talked about how VR feels different in one's mind and in the memory. Can you?
Right. You know, when you do a VR experience, good ones, after it's over and you look back at it, it feels more like it's a dream or a memory than something you watched, because it's so immersive and you feel like you're there.
Right.
You know, that's pretty amazing.
You know, that's interesting because it sort of like gets back to, that's why I always ask people the first movie they saw, because to me, the brain is like wet cement. And so whatever memories get put in there, they feel like they're real memories in a sense. It doesn't even feel like a movie.
Right. What was yours?
Mine was Romeo and Juliet at the drive-in with my grandfather. So it was like nudity, older men, nice car, popcorn. Like it was
All together.
So all of those things found places in my life again and again and again. You know, if I see a man wearing like a cashmere, because my grandfather would have these cashmere kind of houndstooth, it's like jackets. It just creates certain subliminal
Interesting.
things. And to me, Olivia Hussey has always represented just an ideal form of beauty, and an idealized with the long hair and the what. So, and I always think, I wonder if that's just because I saw her
Maybe.
in a film,
Well, I think that the music in the Ten Commandments still holds up. It's one of the best scores ever, and I always am humming it,
Is it Miklos?
No, it's Elmer Bernstein.
Oh, it's Elmer Bernstein.
Yes.
Oh.
And I was once on a panel with him at USC in the music department, and I was just in awe of him, too. I was going, Elmer Bernstein, I'm actually talking to you. Because that music is amazing.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for working with my grandfather, too.
Oh,
My
man,
goodness.
he was the greatest. I can't wait for you to see the movie.
I know. I can't wait to.
I'll get it to you.
You've got to hound Diane Baker,
I
because
will.
every time I see her,
I
she
will.
promises me she's going to have a copy. But thank you.
And
for
I love
being
your
here.
book. I
Thank
bought
you.
it and read it, and it's fantastic. I blame it on Dennis Hopper.
I do. It's all his fault. It's all his fault.
You can buy Illeana's book,
Yes, you
I Blame
can.
Dennis Hopper, on Amazon. It's also now out in paperback. You can find Randall at Randal Kleiser, Kleiser, both on Twitter and Instagram, and his website is randalkleiser.com. Thank you so much.
Thank
And I
you.
want to check out your series, Frozen. That sounds
Defrost.
Defrost. Oh, great.
Frozen was taken.
Yeah.
Yes.
Defrost.
I messed that one up. And as I always say, everyone's life is like a movie with a beginning, a middle, and an end, and this is the end,
Ooh, ouch.
temporarily,
Just
of
of
our
this.
show.
Just for
Thank
today.
you. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
See you next time.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Aw,
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network. The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Popcorn Talk Network or its owners or principals.